you are. Welcome to Vintage Stories, the news series. Everything's up at dbpodcast.org, by the way, but I'm just sitting here laughing at myself because, everything's a little last minute, including when I'm doing stuff for myself. I just went up to dbpodcast.org and looked at the theme, my tagline for this new podcast series, Vintage Stories. And it pretty much didn't make any sense. And all I did was change it to, I just put an "un" in front of it. So it was saying a podcast of quenchable lives, which, I don't know. I wrote that like a few weeks ago and just makes no sense at all. I have no idea why I wrote that. I think it's a little more, maybe I just forgot to put the "un" in. So now it says a podcast of unquenchable lives. Literally just changed minutes before I've started recording when I said, hey, let's look at the website and see what I have up there. But, what are you going to do? I'm the producer and the everything behind Vintage Stories, except for my awesome guests, which we'll get to in a second. But yeah, it's pretty funny. I did this podcast in a different form for years. I was traveling around. I was just, in my mind, thinking somebody's got to do this. I meet all these like crazy, interesting people in the wine and beverage industry, and also a lot of chefs and charcuterie and just really interesting people. So I thought nobody's really talking to these people behind the scenes of all the stuff that we eat and drink. And so I just started it that way. But, you travel, you have a daughter, a nice relationship with a beautiful Italian woman, and you get a little inconsistent with recording. And, not that I'm not going to travel anymore. I still am going to travel quite a bit, going to the good old USA from where I live now in Hawke's Bay, where I'm a permanent resident of New Zealand. Very exciting. I will travel still, but this podcast for the near future is going to be focused on Hawke's Bay, New Zealand, probably do some greater New Zealand things of this giant country that we live in here. But it's really going to be focused more on Hawke's Bay and the people and producers here. Hopefully mostly based on winemakers and speaking to peers and mentors of mine. But I hope to talk to some scientists, research people, certainly some viticulturists, and who knows, maybe delve into the world of the politics behind wine, and there's all kinds of stuff going on. There's some people I really would love to speak to that really affect the industry that we don't think about. There's a big river project going on, a dam going up sort of upstream from Hawke's Bay. I would love to speak to people about that and let them speak the pros and cons of that. Might be dead in the water, pardon the pun, but there's certainly some people pushing for that. Love to speak to people about that. But today, I started off with a professional speaker, presenter. She didn't like the term journalist when we talked about that, but maybe, or a broadcaster. She's sort of tough to define, but if you live in New Zealand and you know anything about drinks and the beer, food, wine industry, Yvonne Lorkin. She is on TV3. She has columns in the paper. She's on national radio. She's been on some of the talk shows in the morning. And I met her a few years ago when she was doing her show Thirsty Work, which she still does, and it's probably more popular than ever. I catch it online sometimes, but I tend to not watch much TV, being the borderline millennial that I am. I catch most things online these days. But anyway, I'll get back to Yvonne in a second. I do want to give a shout out to Willie Devine. Amazing music to start off the podcast today. Again, a local guy. We're really going to focus on Hawke's Bay and try to do as many Hawke's Bay things as we can. So Willie, if you are out in seeing a live band in Hawke's Bay, there's probably a good chance Willie's going to be somewhere in the background playing piano, or he could be up front playing bass. He's probably written most of the songs that you're hearing, And yeah, man, he just whipped that up and was like, yeah, sure, no problem, I can do that. And he's just a really cool guy, and I appreciate having him on board. He's helping me out now do this podcast. And hopefully the quality and production, I mean, yeah, production value. Imagine that on a podcast all the way down here in New Zealand. So I want to show the talents of the area. And I think it's a bit of an advantage of myself, maybe being a little naive, being the expat that I am, or maybe just, excited to be here and show the rest of the world what Hawke's Bay has. So thanks to Willie for doing that. I hope you guys dig the tunes, all throughout. And if you want to check out Willie locally, he's his main band is the Tropical Downbeat Orchestra, and they're simply found at tdo.co.nz. Or for you traveling people, that's tdo.co.nz. Anyway, yeah, it's a new series, new life to it. Very exciting. I mean, why not? I can do this. I've got technical prowess. I used to work in the music industry, but I will struggle with this at times. It's a bit, shooting from the hip with this, so be patient with me. But like I said, having somebody like Willie on board and a few friends like Tom back in the States who helped me get this set up. He was just flew in last week to check it out. That's how he rolls. But yeah, like I said, somebody's got to do this. Somebody's got to tell these stories. Why not me? Why not the guy who's got a sweet pair of new headphones? They almost look like radio headphones, so I can hear myself and check out these recordings. Today, like I talked with Yvonne Lorkin. So I think you guys will enjoy the interview with her. We spoke for probably a little less than an hour. She's a great speaker. It was really easy. That's why I chose her to do the first one, because I knew I could sit back and just ask her a few questions, and she would have a lot of great answers and a lot of cool things to say. I find myself very comfortable speaking with her. I think you probably would too. And that's the sort of attitude that she has. She says it towards the end of the podcast. Just reach out. You can find her at YvonneLorkin.com. That's YvonneLorkin.com. There you can find stuff to her direct-to-consumer wine sales, which is called Wine Friend, links to Thirsty Work, and all her blogs and writings, and she's been published. She's a very active woman, and we're lucky to have her back in Hawke's Bay these days. So I want to thank her for sitting down and talking to me. Yeah, Yvonne Lorkin, cool name, right? I mean, people in New Zealand probably take that for granted, but if you're in the States, yeah, Google. Cool name, right? You may even find her too. I heard she mentioned during the podcast that her show Thirsty Work has been sold to some networks in the States, so maybe a bit of searching. But the easiest way is if you just, again, this is the kind of person she is. She says it during there. Just go to her website. She'll send you a link to Vimeo, and you can check it out if you have a real interest in New Zealand food and wine and beer. I think she does some distillery stuff as well. But it's really cool production that she does. She does a good job. There's a lot of great footage, and especially if you're not from New Zealand, you can learn a lot really quick. And she's just got a really good way of getting that point across. So anyway, we discussed that during it, and I hope you guys enjoy it. As always, we need to sponsor this podcast. Can't just pay for itself. I got all this crazy equipment here that needs to be paid for. So please go to decimalwines.com and check out the store there. We're now shipping everywhere in the world. Well, pretty much everywhere. And for my buddies back in the States, I still love you. I'm down here far, far away, but I've created decimalwinesusa.com, free shipping to America. It's all real easy to do. And for people in New Zealand, Australia, the UK, the US, just go in there, click on the flag. We'll find you. We'll ship it to you. And if you use the promo code at checkout, DB Podcast, you get 10% off. Spend over $100, 10% off, just because we're aight like that. So, yep, here's my chat with Yvonne. and I'll talk to you guys in a bit. Enjoy. Just started and I don't know anything about you, so I don't know what's complicated to you. And it's very exciting because you just heard my new theme music, and I think we're in an upbeat mood now.
I'm really, really upbeat after that theme music. I'm shaking. There are parts of me shaking that haven't for a while.
And I think what's cool about that, local Hawke's Bay artist. I've done this podcast in other ways before. Usually with a lot of international folks as I'm traveling, people passing through for vintage, stuff like that. But I've kind of pulling it all back now and really just going to focus on Hawke's Bay for a while, which is sort of good because you've only, in the last couple of years back to Hawke's Bay, right?
Yeah. So we came back in 2014. But, I'm Hawke's Bay, born and bred. So, yeah, keeping it local, keeping it within the Tūranga Waiwai is what I'm all about.
I heard that
absolutely.
term at Pino 17 quite a bit. Which was a blast. That was
wasn't it?
Quite a show they put on there.
Huge event. It's amazing because, if you're not in the industry, people have no idea how massive this event is globally, and yet we have it in Wellington, every 3 years now.
Yeah, with awesome weather.
It's incredible. Yeah.
That was a bit interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody's like, they got to Hawke's Bay after like the next week, some of the media, and it was gorgeous. And the summer we had was like so dry.
It was a screamer. It was amazing.
And they were just like, oh, okay, we get it now. We were wondering when we were in Wellington how you guys could grow fruit here. But where were you before Hawke's Bay? Traveling around?
No, not traveling around. We just we were relocated to Christchurch for a couple of years for my husband's job.
Mm-hmm.
So we went there and we found out we had to move in 2010, the end of 2010, and we moved in end of January 2011, and then a fortnight later, after we'd landed in Christchurch, the earthquake struck.
Yeah,
so that was really. That was really intense. So we had a really full-on 3.5 years there.
Yeah.
And it wasn't you had lots of people saying, oh, why don't you just leave? Just leave.
Yeah.
Just get out, come back home.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that simple. My husband was the head of health and safety for a very, very big company down there, and he had hundreds of employees who are pretty traumatized and things pretty tough. So you can't leave people in that situation. So but what was good about it was I got to spend a lot of time with the Canterbury and Waipara wine growers.
Which is a really cool scene.
Very cool.
I'm working
very
with
cool.
A woman this year at Harvest who spent some time there doing harvests at a couple different wineries. And
yeah, it's a fascinating area. I mean, the whole kind of, you've got the Banks Peninsula kind of sub-region, and then you've got the West Melton sort of western side, and then of course you've got the northern Canterbury Waipara side, and then even further north slightly to Cheviot, areas like that. Incredible geography for a start, and just great people. Very, very great,
really
stories and people with a lot of energy and creativity down there.
You'd have some extreme conditions, I guess.
Yeah. So that was good. So I really kind of threw myself straight into that whole scene for a couple of years, which was fine.
I'm just going to shut my door before the cat comes in.
Oh, I wondered. I thought it might have been you meowing, but it doesn't happen often.
That's the podcast world. So studio in progress up here.
That's good.
But I'm really happy you agreed to do this, because this is sort of the launch of, like I said, the new version of it.
Sure.
And why not have a professional on? So a professional journalist.
Oh, no, not a journalist. No, please don't say journalist.
So what would you say? Who are you, Yvonne?
Well, I'm not. Okay, so this is just my opinion.
Okay.
A journalist.
That counts.
A journalist is someone who gets paid to kind of get their facts straight. I'm totally cool, by the way, with the kitten meowing at the door.
I think it adds a little texture.
I think it adds almost gravitas to what we're doing.
Yes,
Cats want to hang out with cool people. So,
Yeah.
So journalists get paid to get their facts straight, whereas I'm a columnist. So I get paid to have an opinion.
Editorial columnist.
Yeah. So I like a storyteller. You
Yep.
know, yes, it's important that I get the facts as right as I can, but I'm more about getting to more about showing off the personalities of the people in this business that I meet and come across, and to talk about different styles.
Are you a professional broadcaster, would you say? Because
a professional broadcaster would imply, Dan, that you get paid to broadcast, doesn't it? Isn't that what the word means? And I do not get paid to broadcast anything. So I don't get paid to go on national radio. I don't get paid to do the TV thing. I don't get paid.
Back up a little bit. So you do a little on national radio. Maybe we won't we won't try to categorize.
Do you want me to kind of bullet point what I do?
Sure.
A little bit. All right.
That's a good idea.
Okay, so I'm the wine editor for Dish magazine. Mm-hmm. So we have two major food and wine titles in this country. There's Dish magazine and there's Cuisine magazine. So I've been with Dish for about 10 years now. Mm-hmm. Then I'm the wine columnist for Canvas, which is the New Zealand Herald's Saturday magazine.
Yep.
Which is huge, a huge newspaper. I write a wine column that is a separate wine column that's syndicated out to about a dozen regional newspapers around the country. So what you read here in Hawke's Bay is very similar to what people all over the country and different regions will see. I've been doing that since about 2003, so a long time. Only sort of had one break in that time. For the last 7 years, I've had a semi-regular spot on Radio New Zealand National. So we started with Jim Mora in the afternoons, and then that went to Simon Mersep, and now it's Jessie Mulligan. And, I did stuff on Radio Live, and last year was really cool. Got to do a bit of morning television on the Paul Henry show. So doing a bit of wine because he's really into wine. And then
bit of a character, that guy.
Yeah. That was fun. That was really interesting. And
he's like one of the guys when I first got to New Zealand. I'm like, wow, TV's a little different here than in America.
He's a classic human. He's great. So he's very polarizing though. But I really like him.
I think he's hilarious.
He's great. And but that was a kind of learning curve. Getting your head around the fact that yes, you're on live television, but you're also on live radio. Yeah. So you're just like this. You can't take yourself too far away from the microphone, and then you have to make sure that you've got your right angles and everything's all good. So that's the radio side of things. And for the last 6 years, I've been producing a TV show called Thirsty Work, which is
how I met you. Actually.
That's exactly right. Yeah. That's how we met. And so it's kind of like a liquid country calendar, So it's not me mincing about the countryside, telling people how to drink wine. It's me kind of introducing the viewers to, the farmers, the pioneers, the innovators, the grape growers, the winemakers, the people behind the scenes, the people in front of the scenes, that kind of that slake the thirst of the nation pretty much. So that's, so we started out on Food TV, which is a Sky TV channel, and we were on TV3 last year, and hopefully...
Can you get that overseas? Like if somebody wanted to watch it online or anything like that?
I think you can. Well, it's on TV3 On Demand.
Okay.
3 On Demand, so you can look it up there. We have an overseas distributor. We have a distributor in the States who's managed to circulate the previous series on channels all over the world, which has been really cool.
Cool.
But people can just email me, and I'll send them a link to a Vimeo channel that they can have a look at.
Cool.
That's cool. It's easy done. Yeah, so that's kind of what I do, and I judge at a lot of the wine shows around the country. And,
I see some photos of your nose in a glass every so often.
I know. So cliched, eh? So I keep going, God, let's have a different kind of photo, but then it's like, what else do you do?
Yeah. Standing there in front of thousands of glasses or your nose in a glass and things. So, well, anyway, that's good. You're back in Hawke's Bay.
Yes.
And you're enjoying it, obviously, but you're still traveling a lot.
Yeah, I travel a lot. So I'm actually at the moment where I'm on a kind of series of roadshows with my business partner, Debbie Sutton. We have a business called winefriend.co.nz, which is really cool, sort of individual palette-based wine subscription service that we have, and that's really fun. But you've got to travel. And in my line of work, even though my columns sadly I don't have as many words as I used to. The newspapers are all kind of condensing, and everyone's being told to cut this and cut that. So I've only got a couple of hundred words each week to play with. But if you don't put yourself out there and get to learn what companies are doing, what producers are doing, what's going on, what's kind of happening, then you're really just it's all very pedestrian. You're faking it. Yeah, you kind of are. So that's my take on it. But it's hard, because I've got kids and I've got to try and keep my house in order.
I know
my business and keep to all my deadlines. So it's intense.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks it's a very glamorous
Well,
job.
I think,
it's not.
I probably wouldn't have you sit down and talk with you. I didn't think you could be authentic, you know what I mean? Because I saw it firsthand, but you're also, I would say, honest about things. Like, even if you read your column, it's like, hey, this is like this, but if you like, if there's something you didn't like about it, you would just say, like, I don't really like this about it, but this part's cool. And
well, that's it. I mean, it's one of those situations where I'm not out to kind of bag anyone on purpose. And I always think about the kind of human being that would like a particular wine, unless it's riddled with faults, unless it's a bad wine, full stop. It may not necessarily be, nectar of the gods to me, but there might be someone who maybe leans towards that kind of food or leans towards that sort of style of stuff, and I think, well, maybe they would like it. So yes, if you like your Pinot, with super high acidity, or if you like your Pinot Gris a little bit soapy, then you might like this. That's kind of how it rolls for me. I try and give people ideas about what's good to drink at the end of the week, as opposed to filling up a couple of hundred words with what's terrible.
I'm sorry if I don't remember, but for Wine Friend and some of your columns, do you do a lot of stuff from imported wines too?
Yeah, a lot.
I know. I thought I've read some of your imported wine reviews.
Yeah. So people, just to give you some idea, I mean, it's about 3 dozen wines a week that I would see that would come over my desk. That's unsolicited. It's a lot of wine, and that's maybe 80% New Zealand, but a lot of imported wines, and that's great.
It's getting better.
It's brilliant. I mean, I get such joy when I get a box of samples, and there'll be wines from the likes of Lebanon or Portugal or Austria or California or wherever, and
California, no way.
Yeah, way. So more and more, I know there's lots of that stuff coming in, and some of it's good. But I think Kiwis, we're great for trying new things. We're fiercely loyal, but we're brave. We want to try different wines from around the world.
We
and
certainly travel enough.
Yeah, we do.
Not afraid to get on a plane.
So it's a great thing that our wine industry, that we have distributors and importers in this country now that are bringing in really interesting wines, and they're affordable.
I just got I don't know if I can give them a plug, but was it Maison Duran, the French importer? I just got a ridiculous package of Rhone and southern France stuff that I had no idea was even in New Zealand.
They are so good in that store. Yeah, they're really good. I'm constantly trawling through their online catalogue and saying, can you send me one of these? Can you send me one of those? In a couple
of weeks, I'm going to be stopping by. Because don't they have like a cheese and
charcuterie
shop?
Fromagerie and charcuterie. And it's great. And it's always heaving with people. So,
I bet,
and that's downstairs. So you kind of have to walk, make your way through the heaving tables of people indulging in the great food, and then you head upstairs to the wine shop.
I think it's funny about New Zealand that I've noticed, being an outsider, which I think is an advantage in a lot of ways, particularly for something like this, because I have a different curiosity and don't take certain things for granted. But when you do have a really smart, good business in New Zealand, it's people respond to it really well.
Oh, they do.
And it's just sort of getting over the hump of like, can you do this? Oh, nobody's really done that before. And it's like, well, it's a pretty young country.
That's it. And I think Kiwis in business are great at just saying, when people say, can you do this? Is this possible? We go, yep.
Yeah.
And then we kind of squirrel ourselves away and figure out how to do it later. Because we don't like to say, it's going to be too hard. We just go, sure.
Yeah.
And
And figure it out.
Figure it out later on.
I've done a lot of that working for some winemakers in New Zealand.
And I think it's quite an endearing feature. I think that's why people from overseas like dealing with Kiwis, because we make it happen. We make things work. It may not necessarily work perfectly, but we'll give it a good start.
Yeah, in Hawke's Bay, as far as wine goes, we're like, yeah, we can grow that.
Sure.
And that. And,
that's interesting that you say that, Dan, because, for years and years, and I think it's actually still going on, that people have been saying, what is Hawke's Bay? What is Hawke's Bay's signature variety? Because you've got to have one. Marlborough's got Sauvignon Blanc, and Central Otago's got Pinot Noir, and Nelson have got the aromatics thing kind of cornered. What is Hawke's Bay?
Yeah, but I mean, even the old region's the same. It's
I am. But for me personally, whenever I'm talking about Hawke's Bay and what I love about it, I'm like, it's the ultimate wine region. There is nothing you can't grow here.
There's a lot of great sites.
There's great sites all over. It just takes a bit of extra work, and you're not necessarily going to be able to grow mountains of it because, it's just Hawke's Bay. Sorry, I just tapped the microphone.
I'm sure it's fine.
It's the ultimate wine region. You can grow anything here, and you can grow anything pretty darn well. I mean, we have beautiful, beautiful, delicate, sparkling wines being produced here, and then you have these amazing aromatics and big, grunty, robust reds and Chardonnay that you just, want to swim around in and take your dying gulp of, and then you have beautiful dessert wines and everything in between. So it's great, but it also makes things tricky marketing.
Makes it a little tricky when I go overseas to sell Hawke's Bay reds. I've almost tried to pick a couple things to do, but for instance, when I go over and sell the Paratua and Stone Paddock stuff, it's like I kind of knew off this outset, let's try Syrah first, because I think people can get their head around that pretty easy, and then the blends sort of later. But I do think we got to stop calling them Bordeaux blends and just call them Hawke's Bay blends, or because first of all, people are putting Syrah in there anyway and doing all kinds of stuff. So, but it is a little tougher, and I think that market's a little more crowded, when you go to the U.S. You have Italy, France, Spain, California, South America to compete with, and Syrah's we don't make a lot of it anyway, so we might as well.
I agree with you.
Sell it all there.
Yep.
But no, it is good to, as far as being somebody who enjoys drinking wine and different stuff. I can go into my cellar from my wine swaps from my friends and be like, I could have a straight Crab Franc tonight. I can have
a Malbec if you like,
Blanc. There's a Hawke's Bay Pinot in here, It's a bit, it can be all over the place, but
it's a smorgasbord.
Yeah. But again, that's a good thing. And then I guess the other thing is trying to get people here where we're not always on the beaten path of the typical tourist coming through. No,
but it is easier now. I think in the last decade, it is really
it's improved a lot.
Really improved, and I mean, even before then, certainly when I moved back to Hawke's Bay from Auckland in 1998. That was an amazing vintage. It was you
good
couldn't
summer
make
to show up.
Huge summer. You couldn't make a bad wine. It was intense, but that kind of coincided with the whole rebranding of Hawke's Bay from what was the fruit bowl of New Zealand, because growing up in Hawke's Bay during the 70s and 80s, it was all about orchards and farms.
Yep.
Orchards and farms. So it's the fruit bowl, right? And so thanks to people like Graham Avery at Cellini and Kim Thorpe, who was with Saatchi and Saatchi Wellington at the time, which it was named top 5, one of the world's top 5 advertising agencies. He and his friend Andy Coltart had bought Lombardy wines in Havelock, were turning that into Black Barn. They were integral in rebranding Hawke's Bay to wine country.
Yeah.
And then, the farmers markets kind of kicked in, and Hawke's Bay went from being this orchards and farms, to suddenly being a cuisine destination. The wine scene in the late 90s and right into the early 2000s just really, it was like this sort of tsunami of great taste, and you had wineries opening cellar doors all over the show. Those cellar doors then started offering food, and it might have been something as really simple as just a platter, antipasto or whatever. But then you'd have full-fledged restaurants, and it became a place, where the locals began to feel really proud. We kind of felt a little bit flash.
Yep.
A little bit stylish, a little bit sophisticated. It was kind of cool, and then we'd ring our mates in Auckland and say, come on down for the weekend, and, or get the Wellington people up. And it was just, whereas before that, it was just like, where would we take people? What would we do? Where would we go?
Yeah,
let's
like
just
2
not
or 3
bother.
places,
So suddenly there was this eruption of great food and wine establishments, and there was stuff to do, and everything kind of became quite styly, and that's only just gotten more and more momentum with, now we have the fork seasons, the food and wine classic events, which have just catapulted Hawke's Bay into this realm of
it's an
super
explosion.
cuisine.
I can't believe how many events
Very
there are
cool.
this.
And people from all over the country and from overseas are now coming into Hawke's Bay on purpose.
Yeah, they do a great job of marketing that, and you'd be crazy. Everybody's a part of it.
Everyone's a part of it.
I don't even know
it's awesome.
who's not a part of it these days. Like, as far as I almost see every friend and producer I know is doing something with it, and you'd be crazy not to.
And the great thing about it is, even though it's really sophisticated and it's marketed really well, this whole event, you've got the summer food and wine events, and then you've got the winter food and wine events. It's not, I don't know, am I allowed to use this word on a podcast?
You can use any word
It's not wanky.
Yeah. Oh, you can use words.
Wanky's all right?
That.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not, it's, yes, it looks, the image of these events is very slick and very polished, but it's not wanky. They're very accessible. They don't take themselves too seriously.
They're fun.
They're fun.
Yeah, they're fun events.
Yeah. So that's a great thing, and of course it can only help when Hawke's Bay wine growers taps into when we have major international wine media here for the likes of, say, the Pinot Conference, and just to kind of bring them in and show them what Hawke's Bay has to offer, and then they're out telling the world, which is cool. And I have a lot to do with really high-end, quite wealthy people that come into Hawke's Bay, and they're mostly from the States, actually, a few from Europe, but mostly from the States. They come into Hawke's Bay as part of their New Zealand kind of tour, but they're not in New Zealand to go bungee jumping or go on hobbit trails or anything. No, they're not here to do that. They come into New Zealand because they want to go golfing. They want to go golfing. They want to fish for trout. They want to do wine and food, or hunt.
Or hunt.
Yeah.
Maybe ride a horse.
But predominantly they just want to, golf, food, wine, fish. And they go to these amazing luxury lodges, and they've already done their research about New Zealand. They know Hawke's Bay is a premium destination. They know what varieties to look for, and they're prepared to pay, a lot of money for great experiences here in this region. And they go and do the same thing down in Central Otago and or up north, and it's very cool that we get those travellers. But I don't think the government talks about those kind of travellers very often.
I think it's improved probably something like 5-fold since I got here in 2008, where I would run into a lot of people in the 3 or 4 different cellar doors I had worked over the first few years here, and they would say, first time we came to New Zealand, we only spent like 2 days in Hawke's Bay, and this time we come back for 2 weeks, or this next time we come back, we're just coming to Hawke's Bay. Yeah. Because, and it is that particular demographic that you're talking about, you're still going to get maybe the kids and backpackers and adventure type, they're just going to pass through.
Yeah, they pass through.
But, maybe a little bit older or a little bit, more established. Even some of the young professionals that I've met, like in the, the kind of 30s and 40s that have a few bucks that want to do a nice holiday. They come through and they're like, wait a minute, I should be here longer.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I mean,
You need to lock away at least a week or so.
and I think it's you know, because of the ocean, and you know, there obviously all the wineries and everything, and it's such a different experience than going to like Queenstown or something, you know, which is just really
very
full
touristy.
on and very touristy.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it is all those things added up, like the markets and just kind of.
But it's very, I think Hawke's Bay is very unforced.
Yes, that's a good way to
that's
put it.
what I love about Hawke's Bay, and certainly the people that that I come across, that, you know, from other countries that have spent time here, they just love Hawke's Bay. They think it's a very, very pure, very accurate kind of indicator of New Zealand as a whole, and that we're very cool with what we do.
And there's history here. Yeah.
Great history. I mean, immense history in Hawke's Bay, and it's just groovy. The climate's great. People are good. We're very,
we're
like
in
I say,
a pretty nice late autumn day today, almost winter, and
you know, looking out your studio.
Oh yes, my
windows,
second floor studio here.
Your terrace studio with the very lovely earthy colours on the leaves, and the vines are starting to get a bit naked on it, which is cool.
What have you? I just thought of this randomly, but what have you tasted lately that's got you pretty excited? Anything new? I mean, besides Decibel. I mean, if you want to go.
Oh, because you know, when you taste Decibel wines, there's no going back, really, is there? What am I tasting at the moment that I really love? That's kind of spinning my wheels. I'm all over barrel fermented Sauvignon Blancs. Love my barrel fermented Sauvignon.
Yeah. I know a couple of those.
Yeah. I'm big on those, and it's kind of a mission of mine to, you know, get people that say that they're not Sauvignon drinkers to just try a barrel fermented example, you know, because it's just a different beast altogether. So I'm big on barrel fermented Sauvignons.
That goes well in Hawke's Bay too. The fruit really suits it here.
It does, and I think that's where Hawke's Bay needs to do more of it. And I've long kind of campaigned for the Hawke's Bay, you know, Regional Wine Awards to have a separate category for barrel fermented Sauvignon styles as opposed to a generic Sauvignon Blanc category.
Yeah, I think all you'd have to do is put a different price point for it for the category or something.
Yeah, but the problem is, you know, you get judges from other regions or other countries, and their vision of what they think Sauvignon Blanc should be is not necessarily what Sauvignon Blanc is in Hawke's Bay. You know, you're not going to get that capsicum and cat's pea and you know, basil and tomato stalk and passion fruit character so much as say Marlborough example. You know,
well, to give some of our listeners an idea, I think Paratua's Grace, which is a barrel fermented Sauvignon Blanc, has been twice sent back from export certification because they thought it was Chardonnay.
Exactly.
So,
it's Sauvignon for Chardonnay drinkers.
Yeah, so that's exactly. I'm the same. I will drink those as well. And but that being said, when I'm, you know, it tends to be when I'm in the States and out at a restaurant or tasting what people have going by the glass. I'm always surprised by what Marlboro's out there, you know, and the good ones, you know. Yep. I mean, I think it was Lisa Perotti Brown made a really, really good point in like 2 years ago. She did a real big New Zealand write-up, she wrote that I just thought it was put perfectly. She just said, you know, there's some things that are so exciting about New Zealand wine, and then there's Pinot Gris. She just knocked Pinot Gris, and she basically just said, like, you know, the styles are just so all over the place, and some people are making it so cheap that it's like, what's the point? Whereas with Sauvignon Blanc, even the cheapest ones have character, and they're interesting, you know, and they're like, whoa, that's crazy. I don't know if I could drink a whole bottle of that, but it's pretty interesting.
It's true. It is really true. But I think she's being really unfair on Pinot Gris.
I agree. But,
look, you know,
but there's some awesome ones, but you got to think of, she's probably got like, you know, 60 of them in front of her, and there's probably like 8 or 10 that are awesome, or maybe not even bother to send to her because people like me and you bought it all up. Yeah. You know? So, but I know what you're saying. Yeah. There's.
It's an interesting, Pinot Gris is an interesting thing. You know, I know people that absolutely won't touch the stuff. You know, people in the media, you know, people in wine that won't touch the stuff, which I just think is crazy. But what, 10, 15 years ago, I could probably count the Pinot Gris that I actually enjoyed maybe on one hand. But now, like, I just absolutely, I actually like Pinot Gris, but it's because Pinot Gris got better.
Yeah.
New Zealand winemakers have got their heads around it. Our grape growers have got their heads around it. Now we know what we're capable of, and you get beautiful, clean,
It suits
aromatic styles.
it
It suits
us.
this country, but I think the problem with at consumer level is that everyone gets told you should be drinking Pinot Gris. It's the thing to drink. So everyone goes to the supermarket and they look at the Pinot Gris shelf and they go, "Oh, I'll take that one because it's covered in metals," but they don't. And then they get it home and they pour it and it's too dry, and they think that that's what Pinot Gris all tastes like. Instead of going back and trying a different one, which might have a little more RS and be a little bit more, voluptuous and appealing, and then that might be for them. So that's their style. So I think it's the poor old consumer is a bit confused by Pinot Gris because there's so many different styles. Like Lisa Perotti-Brown says, there's like this kind of smorgasbord, like this massive continuum of
and
styles.
Quality levels too.
And quality levels.
Yes.
Yeah. There is some total dross out there.
And there's actually really good quality for really affordable.
Yeah.
And then you buy something at the same price and you're like, what happened here?
Exactly.
This is like lolly water or something.
Yeah, it's a very tricky style to get your head around, but I'm a fan of Pinot Gris now. I'm okay with saying that. I feel strong.
I've always been. There was a moment where it was a bit of a flash in the pan in the States when I was running my family's restaurant in like the early 2000s, and it came in heavy from Europe, like Austria and obviously Alsace, and it was like, oh, this is almost like, you could tell there was a movement behind it, almost like there was for Malbec and Shiraz, Malbec from from Argentina, and I was like, oh, I guess everybody's gonna be pouring Pinot Gris now, and then it just kind of went away, and it was strange, and I don't know why. Pinot Gris, I think everybody in the States, there was this history that they didn't account for of cheap Pinot Grigio from Italy and California, and that they just sort of butted heads with the quality and richness that you were getting from even Italian. There was some good Italian Pinot Gris as well.
Yeah. So
it's just funny how the industry can work and what wines work and what takes off and how long it stays, and I don't know that. Malbec has the staying power in the States that I don't know why, because it's easy to say and it's cool to say, I guess.
Well, look at what's happening with Moscato in the States.
Yeah.
Really, who would have thought?
Yeah, well, that's price. That's definitely price driven. But, I get excited when I go to the U.S. because there's the wine bars and Somm scene is just, it's really, really good, and it's not like you're overpaying for it. We went to like a burger place in Manhattan, and they had a Somm, and there was like amazing wines like from southern France and Rhone. Every burger wine you could want to have with it, and there was a Somm in the place.
Well, see, that's what we need in New Zealand. We're slowly catching on, and we need more. We need more Somm. We need more Somm driven wine lists at every level. Yeah. Because you don't have to be a super, super high end restaurant just to have someone who knows their shit.
Yeah.
There to help people choose and learn.
That's half the battle. I mean, I think any good Somm is excited when he's like, I found a gem for that I can pour by the glass.
Yeah.
At like $12 a glass or 10 or whatever, and just
sell it.
Yeah.
Actually sell that idea. You don't even need to be a Somm, and you just need to be passionate about it.
Yeah.
You just need to be someone who is able to communicate what's good about that wine and why it should go with that dish, or but also restaurateurs need to get their heads away from the whole, oh no, offering wine by the glass, there's wastage, there's gonna be too much waste. No, the more wines you have available by the glass, the more wine people will buy. And if it gets to the end of the night and you've got half a bottle of such and such a Pinot Gris or such and such a Viognier or a Gewürztraminer or whatever, and you're thinking, oh no, I'm going to waste it, just go and tell everyone in the restaurants, hey, we've got half a bottle of this here. Why don't we do glasses for, glass of it for $8? Only got one bottle left. Who wants it? Cool. And it's gone. You've made money. You've exposed people to a new style that maybe they would never normally try for themselves. it's this. We really need to get our heads in this country around glass pours and more of them at every level of restaurant. I think, but then, sometimes that's too hard basket for the restaurateurs themselves, and that's where the people in the trade, the sales reps and even wineries themselves need to kind of
that's getting, it reminds me of something I said earlier. Talk about something that it's improved fivefold. My first few jobs, because I grew up in a restaurant, was working for winery restaurants. And my experience, I was like hired immediately. I had like interviews at the top 3 places, and luckily I chose Tiawa at the time because that's where I met Jenny, and that really helped my winemaking career. But I couldn't believe how for the first few years I was here, how underpaid and not taken seriously the hospo side of things were. And you get these part-time kids doing it, and and people don't expect a certain level of service, and then but that has improved a lot.
It's definitely improved. And I remember years ago, this is before we went to Christchurch. I was really heartened to get a phone call from a woman called Jennifer Lecomte, who owned a cafe called Opera Kitchen in Hastings.
Sure.
And she called me and said, she wanted me, if I had time, to pop in, bring some wines in to taste with her staff. So the baristas and the waitresses and the waiters and the kitchen team and that, just come and sit down and try some wine. And Yvonne, can you, maybe
give them some pointers.
Give them some pointers about how to sell this wine and why this particular style goes with this particular style of food and yada yada. And I thought, how great is that the owner of the establishment has thought about that and knows that if her staff are upskilled, then that can only mean
pretty simple.
But great sales. I just wish more people would do that. And certainly when I have been. I used to run cellar doors and things like that back in the day. And the first thing we did, whenever there was a new wine, is you got everyone together, you tasted it, you looked at the menu, you talked about why, how the wine works really well with this and this and this. What are some features of the wine? What are some little nuggets of knowledge about that wine that you can tell your tables,
give me a selling point.
Away you go.
Why am I drinking this wine?
Yeah. It's a great thing. So we are. I think New Zealand overall is improving, but there's a lot of work to do, I think.
So was that your intro to the industry, working in tasting rooms and things like that?
No. Well, my introduction to the industry on a professional level, as in getting paid to do anything involving wine, was when I was still living in Auckland. A friend of mine owned a sort of like a temping agency, and she was friends with the people at Glengarry's, a guy called Mark Young at Glengarry's at the time, and he wanted people to do in-store tastings. And she knew I enjoyed wine. I mean, I have enjoyed wine ever since I was a little kid. I just love the stuff. I think I've always thought wine is really cool and really tasty. Smells nice, tastes nice. And she knew I could string a sentence together, and that I was reasonably, I was doing advertising sales for BFM, which was a student radio station at the time. So she knew I could sell stuff. Yeah. So she was like, come, do you want to earn a bit of cash? Come and do some in-store tastings and it was Sacred Hill at the time,
Good place
in Auckland.
To start.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I started doing, a couple of hours on a Friday night or Saturday afternoon. It kind of got me into researching wine. I'd go onto Netscape Navigator.
Oh my gosh.
I know, I'm showing my age there. And
dial up.
Yeah, I know. Dial up some tasting sheets and things, or a little story about the winery or the people involved in the wine, and then I'd take my pieces of paper off to the tasting.
5 minutes for a JPEG to load up on the screen of the bottle shot.
And I really loved it. I felt like when I was talking about the wines to customers and asking them about what they were smelling and what they were tasting, and then, telling a story, I felt some kind of like I had a vested stake in the success of the company, and I wanted them to do well. And so I did a few of those and then ended up, back in Hawke's Bay, and just tasting room stuff and cellar door
Mixing it
things, mixing it up, and I got a job at Havelock North Wines and Spirits, which was an amazing shop, a very, very cool wine store in Havelock North. Not long after I'd moved back to Hawke's Bay, and Richard Gregory, the late Richard Gregory, was the owner there, and he used to. He just had a huge energy for New Zealand wine, but he would import. I mean, we had Petrus and, we had Art Series Margot. It was very cool. So he would bring in heavyweight wines from around the world and sell them in a little shop in Havelock North. And he taught me a huge amount about wine. And it was great because there were moments there that, I remember Steve Smith, Master of Wine, coming in one day with a bottle, like an empty bottle, but it had a label on it. And he goes, Yvonne, this is this cool thing. We've got this winery, and we're going to call it Craigie Range, and this is what our logo is going to be like. And can I just put it on the shelf amongst the other bottles just to see if it's got, shelf appeal? And I'm like, sure.
Yeah.
And I just remember standing there beside him going, yeah, it looks cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks cool.
That fits in.
It's groovy.
Yeah.
And so that was really exciting for me because, of course, we all know what the massive, awesome thing Craigie Range became over the following years. And I remember, the very first bottle of Viognier I ever saw was Timata, Zara Viognier. They came in. Put it on the shelf. I'm like, what is this? And they're like, wow, let's crack open a bottle and taste it. Wow, crazy. Yeah. The very first one they made was the very first one I ever tasted. And I just fell in love with that whole style right then and there.
Yeah.
So it's really cool. And great winemakers would come through the doors and there'd be this chitty chat and, you'd learn what was going on in the industry, and they'd be doing tastings and you'd hear them talk about their own wines and,
because
I was very nerdy, and of course then I started. I enrolled in Roseworthy's wine marketing program as well, so that was kind of the first intake of external students. So
were you able to? Do you do that here? Or did you have to
I was able to do it. They let me in, providing I could prove I was living and working in a premium wine region in a wine capacity. So Auckland didn't cut it, but Hawke's Bay they were happy for me to be living in Hawke's Bay and working in a wine store and doing freelance kind of wine work for producers around here while studying. So I did, took 4 years. I did their wine marketing, diploma, which was awesome.
I kind of feel like you're definitely not like, you look younger than you must be because you're saying all this experience, and I'm like, well, when the heck was
I
that?
was 11.
Yeah. Like,
I'm old enough to remember the days of Vidal Estate, like Vidal's in St Albans Street, being like this.
I always hear stories
massive
about that.
Party place, and but yeah, I mean, I guess I would have been.
You don't have to tell us.
No, I'm just trying to think of when. No, but I've it's been 20 years. I've been in this business 20 years. Yeah, and I've been involved in other industries. I mean, I had my own business in Auckland. I had a voiceover agency as well as working for TVNZ and BFM and all these other things. But wine was always in the background. Wine was kind of what I was going to do.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily want to make it. Yep. Because I'm shit at chemistry. I know that I would never get past Chem 101. But I love everything about it. I love stories. I love wine stories. And so I knew there had to be a place for me telling wine stories in some capacity. And that's kind of what I've built it into.
You do a good job of, being that medium between... Because I've shown Thirsty Work to some friends overseas.
Oh,
and
cool.
Everybody's, she's pleasant. That's nice.
Oh, she's pleasant.
Yeah, she's
That's
cool.
nice.
Yeah. Because I always, I've always dabbled this. I want to do this a little bit more, and I think probably I'll go a little geekier and a little raw in depth and stuff, and I want it to be a little more long form for the the really interested in the Somm and people like that, but other people as well. Won't get too crazy, but I think it's really tough to ride that line of being like informative but not too in depth.
No, you don't want to get too geeky.
Yeah,
but then
fun,
you want to,
and then not but not jokey. Like there's a lot of douchey kind of like jokey, kind of like, hey, we're just here drinking wine and blah, blah, blah.
Isn't that such bullshit? It just makes me want to scoop my eyes out with a spoon when I see shit like that. And there's a lot of those YouTubers that do that, and I just want to gag. I hate watching that stuff. But then again, I don't like I can feel my own eyes glaze over sometimes when I'm listening to or watching, certain industry people talk and present and that kind of thing. So it is, you're right. How do you get that balance between being informative and entertaining, and so that people leave feeling as though that they want to taste something. I just want to go and buy that, taste it, learn about it, get involved, So
I think it's authenticity, and I think certainly I don't think it's an accident that my favorite wines, if I just look at Hawke's Bay, my favorite wines tend to come from winemakers who are also interesting people and are into other things too.
Yeah, I agree.
They know their music, or they're into the arts, or they're just like cool people, and for whatever reason they might be into something else.
Yeah.
So that when not only does it translate to their wine, but when they go out and sell it, people are like, well, he's just like a cool guy who is talented, who's talented and he does stuff, and I actually talking about his wine for 5 minutes, but then I was talking to him about,
he flies planes or he breeds, I don't know.
Yeah. He's got a farm or
crazy things. I don't know.
But a lot of it does seem to be that artistic mind as well. But, you might be talking about a rugby match or something with the guy, too. So, or the woman.
Exactly. And if that's so, here's a funny thing, right? So, back to the thirsty work thing. We'd go and we'd meet the families or the winemakers, and we'd talk about the wines, taste some wines, we'd cook some food, and we find out a little bit about their personalities and the stories and everything. And then inevitably, after a particular episode's gone to air, I'll be walking down the street, or I'll be in the supermarket or something, and someone will come up to me holding a bottle of wine, maybe from one of the producers that we've, interviewed on the show, and they'll come up and they'll go, Yvonne, this is the wine that was made by the lady with the dog, the little white dog. Yeah. I've got a dog like that. Yeah. Oh, my dog's name is blah, Jessie, but her dog's name was Lassie, but she makes this wine, so I'm going to buy this wine. And you think, so you're buying the wine because you identify with the dog that lady has, and the hay. Yeah. That's cool. If that's your connection, if that's what got you over the line to branch out and try that little boutique brand as opposed to, your stock standard thing, then hey, all power to you. That's cool. Yeah. They bought it for that reason. They didn't buy it because, it's all Mendoza clone, full MLF, indigenous ferment, aged for 1 million years, and freaking acacia or whatever. I don't know. So that's the thing. People will form a connection, whether it's because they watch it on TV or because they listen to something like this, or because they've, there's a quote in a wine review or an article that just resonated with them. It doesn't necessarily have to be because of the techie details or the history or prestige of the place. It's not about that necessarily.
Trust me, most people have ever bought my wine are like, oh yeah, that's that guy from Philly.
Yeah. Funny.
That's about it.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we just did 50 some minutes that quick.
Yeah, I should probably go. I've got editors screaming at me, calling me a useless lump of cat's meat because I haven't got bottle shots.
Tell them you're doing Big Shot podcast. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Who?
They're like, that's cool. The Big Shot podcast is fine, but make sure 5 p.m.
Before you go, website, way to contact you.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm the easiest person in the world to contact. I swear to God, I'm going to be. This is going to sound really morbid. I'll end up being stabbed in an alley somewhere because I've told everyone where I'm going all of the time.
A thirsty work stalker.
I know. So my website is YvonneLorkin.com. So really easy, YvonneLorkin.com.
Mm-hmm.
You can also get hold of me through www.winefriend.co.nz. And that's really cool. That's a groovy little
Yeah, you
little
guys out
thing.
there should check
Yeah.
that out. I'll do
So
a.
it's really fun.
I'll probably when I intro and outro.
But I mean, you can email me at yvonne@yvonnelorkin.com. Pretty easy. You just Google me, and my
just shout out.
phone number is right there.
Just show up at a wine event in Hawke's Bay and you'll be there.
Yeah, it's very easy to get hold of me. And honestly, if anyone has any questions about anything at all involved in, anything at all about wine, about, what it's like living in Hawke's Bay and being in this business, absolutely.
You get back to us. Right. Well, thanks for doing this.
Thank you. This is really fun. The cat quietened down though.
I think somebody may have come and taken the cat away. I heard a door shut. I was like, somebody heard.
Yeah, this is cool. We should do it again.
I think we will. There you go. Thanks, Yvonne. I told you guys, she made that so easy for me. It was ridiculous. I just asked a few questions, sat back, enjoyed the history. I had no idea she had that much connection. I mean, it's pretty obvious if you watch her do her thing that she is authentic. We talked about being authentic during that little interview, and it's clear she's entrenched in it. She's been doing it a long time, and what can I say? She's pretty cool. So thanks, Yvonne. Again, check her out at YvonneLorkin.com. Anything for any of her links to all her work and to her really cool project with Wine Friend, where you can order lots of great New Zealand wines, and I think and international wines too. Yeah, we talked about that. So thank you again, Yvonne. Again, please go to decibelwines.com to check out all the new wines. We just released some rosé, which we're really excited about. There's some new releases of Malbec up there, and we're shipping all over the world. Remember to use the promo code DBPodcast for 10% off. And we've got some great episodes coming up next week. We speak with Rod Easthope, former winemaker at Craggy Range, and some other great wineries in South Africa. And now he's got his own project called Easthope Family Wine Growers, which we're going to discuss. Really funny, interesting guy. And down the road, we have a series specifically, part of the Vintage Stories series on the Giblet Gravels, which will be really interesting. I'm sure Rod and I will discuss that a bit, given his history, but we're going to specifically speak to 6 or 8 people involved in that. So stay tuned for that. And again, thanks, guys. See ya.